Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, it just feels weird that no sports right now. Everything's done. It's summer.
It's the talk when college baseball is over.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of Arkansas fans are still following college baseball. You can't just stop just
No.
because your team's out. So through the World Series, you've still got some stuff to watch. But once that's over, we enter the dreaded talking season, in which everything is all about talking. And what they're talking about all summer long is football, 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 football. To the point where you just want to go nuts.
Yes.
You just want it to start. You're tired of all the talking. The worst part is the SEC media days, where, and I swear, if fans could go there, they may think it's fun. It's just nonstop, at least for somebody like me, where I don't like a lot of jabber about nothing, and that's all that is.
Yeah,
it's just speculation, jabber, jabber. You know, I'm not a typical person that watches sports. I freely admit that. I've said this before. I turn the sound off because I'm interested in the game. I'm not interested in the stories of the announcers, their personal life, all the stuff they've done in the past, all the little funny stories. The game is more interesting that I'm watching than that nonsense. Yeah. And so that's the talking. You got a game going on, but it's like they think talking is better. And if that were true, why would anybody ever go to a baseball game? Because when you go to a baseball game, there's not two guys talking over the PA constantly, right?
Yeah, no, they're not, yeah. I see some people, though, at baseball games that have their headphones in, you know?
Well, maybe.
You seen those guys?
Maybe.
They like to listen to, like, Phil on the call and things like that. And
But to me, the game is interesting.
yeah.
And if you sit and watch these NCAA super regionals going on right now, ask yourself at any point, it doesn't matter what game you're watching, ask yourself, are the two guys talking about the game, or are they talking about something else?
You're going to do a tally on how many
because
times
so
they
many
talk about the
times
game?
they've stopped talking about the game as if it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
And they get into other stuff. So again, the summer of the talking season drives me crazy.
Yeah, I know it does.
I don't pay much attention, honestly. I go out and find other things to do because I'm not interested in talking.
Me either, Mike, but we're going to do some talking today, and we're going to do some answering questions. So let's get right into it, shall we? Mousetown wants to know, were you actually hoping that Indiana State would knock off TCU? Isn't it better for the Hogs to lose to a team that made it to Omaha?
I think a lot of fans feel that way. They want their team, it's not just Arkansas, whatever team knocked their team out, and it doesn't matter if it's baseball or basketball or college football or whatever. If the team that beat your team turns out to be the best team in the country, that means your team was really good, they just played the best. I just don't look at it that way. When I watch a game, I can have no knowledge of either team, any of the coaches or whatever. But I'm going to pick a team within a few minutes of watching that I like better than the other one. I'm just going to do that because I can't sit there and be neutral. I'm not a neutral kind of guy. I'm going to yell and get mad and blame umpires and referees and all this stuff. And so in this particular case, I watched Indiana State. I already had some issues with TCU. I've mentioned that before. Their fans were completely annoying at Baum Walker. I don't begrudge them the right to come in here and celebrate and be happy. But when you're already up on somebody 16-5 or whatever, and now you've scored 17 because they have no choice but to put freshman pitchers in there. And so now you've scored 17 runs, 18 runs, and each time you score a run, they act like it's the first run of the game. But that's just rubbing it in.
Yeah, it is.
And their players, at some point when you're beating somebody by 15 runs, don't you think you just kind of cool it a little bit?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Well, their players didn't. Every time a guy got an RBI, it was like, oh, it was a key RBI in the game.
Yeah.
So I didn't like them. And this is probably unfair because I don't know their head coach. But when they had those dugout shots where he's looking out from the dugout, you know, he just always had a smirk on his face.
He did. He did always have a smirk on his face.
And I think the smirk came from the fact that they were so far ahead, he knew they couldn't lose. So it's like, hey, we got this. So just because of all of that, I didn't really like them.
Yeah, are you rooting for anybody that we know as of right now? This is Monday afternoon. Are you?
Well, I mean,
do you
I
like
think
Oral Roberts?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have now adopted them because look, there's a number of reasons why I like Oral Roberts, but here's one of them. Because the stupid committee picked them a 4 seed in a region.
In a region, yeah.
Which shows how stupid they are. They don't get this stuff right because they don't pay attention. So here they are. Here's a regional 4 seed, the bottom team in a regional that's already is going to Omaha.
That's so awesome.
And the fact that you've got Northwest Arkansas kids on that team helps, and it's just an underdog thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're going to be my team. I'm going to pull for them, and I don't honestly care what happens to TCU. What do I think is going to happen? I think TCU and LSU are probably the 2 best teams in there. Maybe Florida. It's hard to say.
Oh yeah, and Wake Forest, but yeah.
Wake Forest. You know, I wasn't sure about Wake Forest. They almost lost to Alabama in that first game, and you're thinking, man, these teams overrated. And then they just like beat them in the second game, worse than TCU beat Arkansas. So those are the teams that are probably going to win it, maybe those 4. But it's going to be an interesting College World Series.
It is.
It'll be fun to watch.
I'm excited to watch it as well, Mike. I like Oral Roberts, too. I think everybody is Oral Roberts fans, no matter which team you're going to root for. All right, John D. James says, it is just heart-wrenching to see TCU in Omaha. You were never going to convince me the Hogs still weren't the better team.
Look, I get being a fan. I do. But the only way that makes any sense at all is if you are one of these people that believes that somehow TCU figured out Arkansas signals. And I think it's hard, especially if you're talking pitching, because they don't do signals so much pitching anymore. They got the little thing on their arm and all that stuff. But maybe, you know, there are people that believe that TCU hit the ball so well they had to know something. Their pitching was so good they had to know something. So if you're one of those people, conspiracy people that believes that TCU stole Arkansas signals, then I could see where you're saying we should have been there, we got cheated. I don't believe that. I don't think that for a second. And when you look at the domination that TCU had over Arkansas, the second game of the year, the first time Arkansas played them, the second time Arkansas played them, and then you watch what Indiana State did and the way they played them, and they were much closer games. They weren't scoring runs out the wazoo. They weren't scoring double digit 3 innings into the game. I think even if Arkansas had somehow beaten TCU, I don't think they would have. I'm not sure they would have gotten to Omaha.
Really?
I think Indiana State might have beaten them.
Really?
And this just highlights once again what a terrible job the selection committee did in placing Arkansas a national 3 seed and throwing a couple of opponents at them that probably shouldn't have been. As tough a regional opposite Arkansas, and TCU shouldn't have been the 2 seed in Fayetteville. So. It's just the way I look at it.
Okay. I'd like to see, it would be weird to go and see if there's an alternate universe where Arkansas did beat TCU and they had to face Indiana State. I'd like to see the matchup.
You know, I get being a fan again, but you just can't sit here and say we were the better team. There's just no argument there.
Yeah, well, Jacob Kloster asks, so you truly believe that both assistants have statistically had baseball consistently prepared and developed like they should be? He goes on to say DVH can stay. There needs to be a change at hitting coach. Hobbs can have 1 more year, but he is not living up to his hype at developing pitchers. Interesting, Mike. What's your take?
Well, I'm sure Dave Van Horn would be glad to know that his job is spared and Hobbs can have another year. I get this. This is typical fan type stuff that you see on social media. It's ridiculous. Look, for me to sit here and suggest, and anybody, I don't care who you are, if you're a fan, I believe you can say whatever you want. I believe in freedom of speech. You can reveal how stupid you are. I defend your right to reveal your stupidity when it comes to sports. Because to sit here and say that a man who's been as many College World Series as Dave Van Horn has and the success he's had throughout a long career, all the games he's won, all the different situations he's been in, that you, a fan who've never been over there, never been a part of a team, never had to make decisions about who to put in where, what lineup, how to recruit, all the things that go into managing and a successful college baseball program. You know better about what he should do with pitchers and hitters and who his assistant coaches should be than he does. And that's absurd. It's just absolutely absurd. If Dave Van Horn hired Nate Thompson, then I assume he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And if he continues to keep him as his batting coach, I assume he's happy with him.
Yeah.
And if he's not, and if there's an issue, I'm not going to look to the fans to whether that's an issue or not. I'm going to look at him. And if he steps in at some point and says, hey, I'm not getting what I need out of my hitting coach or my pitching coach, and I'm making a change, then that makes sense. But until that happens, there's just not this obvious evidence that he's making terrible mistakes there, that he should just absolutely go get one more, a different pitching coach or a different hitting coach or get rid of both of them. No. This team overachieved. They had all kinds of problems. They got further than they probably should have. And like a lot of teams, they kind of ran out of steam at the wrong time. And that happens all the time.
Yeah, it really does.
It's very random also, by the way.
It is. And DVH said at the beginning of the year at one of the Swatters Club meetings, because I remember this might have been the first one of the year, he talked about either Hobbs or Thompson. I can't remember which one, but he said one of them was being, they were trying to hire him at other places and professional programs. And he was like, no, I want to, I want to be here. I want to be with you. And that shows that they're not bad at their jobs. If they are being offered other things by other people and trying to be taken away from Arkansas, they're not bad at their jobs.
Well, Wes Johnson, who left was Arkansas's pitching coach and left to go to the major leagues, and then decided he wanted to come back. I think Dave Van Horn could have gotten him back, but he didn't. He kept his pitching coach and let Wes go to LSU.
LSU, and yeah.
And then he now is the head coach at Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just would have to assume that Dave Van Horn is a perfectly good baseball coach who somehow, when it comes to his pitching and his hitting coach, his brain malfunctions. No, and I just don't buy it.
That's not right at all. So I agree with you there, Mike. Gary Davis says, Bucknam can't win even one outdoor NCAA championship, and make no mistake about it, the outdoor track and field championship is the championship. This is the best team he's had in all these years. This team was favored to win. What's worse is we've watched A&M and Florida win. John McDonnell had his successor lined up, but Long told him to pound sand. Ooh.
Okay, you're in a better position to answer that than I am, quite simply because while that was going on, I admit, I was watching NCAA baseball.
Mike, come on.
You, on the other hand, were watching track and field, and so you saw it also. Give us your explanation for what happened, because they were favored by quite a bit, and the general consensus is they blew it.
Yeah, I mean, that is what you see on social media, but I'm going to stick up for the team, and I'm going to stick up for Coach Buck here for a second, because they were favored to win, Mike, but a lot of things happened that they couldn't predict would happen, right? As a track and field coach, and Lance Harder has said this, you have to have every puzzle piece lined up correctly to make the puzzle whole and bring back a national championship. Right. But what happened was they were like, okay, we're going to put Aiden Owens in the 400-meter hurdles, and he's going to do this because so far he looks to be the favorite to win it. Well, what happened? He didn't have a good day. That happens. Then you have things like Texas Tech. They get DQ'd, and what happens when Texas Tech gets DQ'd? Florida goes whoop and comes right in hot on Arkansas's tail in the standings of total points. Roger Stona, all year long, he has been one of the best throwers, not only in college, but even in the world. I mean, I think at one point he ranked top 5 in the nation of throwers. And
that's professional or college?
In professional or college. He was ranked one of the top 5 throwers. He hasn't done a bad throw all year, but he got silver, and they weren't expecting that. They were expecting him to get gold. So you have all of these things that aren't lining up for you, right? So it all comes down to the final relay, and Arkansas doesn't do what they're needed to do in that relay. Things happen. I mean, track and field is a funny, funny thing, because you can have all year long somebody doing so well, like Roger Stona as a thrower, and then a kid from Arizona State comes in and throws a really great throw, and then and messes it up.
So there's your defense of Bucknam, right?
Yeah, that's my defense.
Okay, now
is that a lot of things happen that they didn't expect to happen.
This fan, along with a lot of other Arkansas fans, remembers that when John McDonald was the head track coach here, not only did they not achieve what they should have, they usually overachieved. In many of those national championships, they weren't favored, or there was various times that in the course of the meet they dropped behind. It looked like they were going to lose, and they somehow always came back and won. And that's the issue here. But I will also say this: you can't create another John McDonald just because you want him. You know, John McDonald retired. He's since passed on. He could not be the track coach for 500 years. You're going to have to get somebody else at some point. Bucknam's probably as good out there as you're going to find. Maybe there's somebody out there that would do a better job. I don't know. He's won 2 national championships indoors. He hasn't won one outdoors. That's what the guy's referring to, is that the outdoor championship is the one that really matters. That's not true. It matters to win an indoor too. But the outdoor is the biggie because it involves more athletes. There's no way Hunter Yurachek is going to go and look at all the conference championships he's won. Bucknam's been there 15 years now. All the success he's had. Yurachek's not going to say, you know what, but it doesn't really match up with John McDonald, so you're fired. He's not going to do that because it's unrealistic. So, yeah, they were favored. Some of what you said is probably excuse making. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you got to perform. And if you don't, you're going to get criticized. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be the coach there or you're somehow done a terrible job. It just means that you were favored to win a national championship and you didn't. But this is what I was talking about again 2 or 3 weeks ago when I said in men's sports, fans, especially on social media, go nutso, much more so than in women's sports. It's not good enough to finish third when we thought you were going to finish first. You have to finish first, and if you don't finish first, I'm going to go nutso, you need to be fired. That's just the way that works.
Well, it's interesting, too, because I don't think they went nutso on the women. The women weren't favored, right? So they ended up being third. And also, it's Lance Hart. It was Lance Harter's final meet. So what are you going to say? Fire Lance Harter?
Even if the women had been favored and hadn't won it, you wouldn't have gotten this kind of reaction. That's what I'm telling you.
All right, we'll see. I'll check in with you if the women are favored next year. We'll see what happens. Dr. Strange-Report wants to know, since you have been there, besides Dana Altman and John L. Smith, what other coaches across all sports just wasn't a good fit at the university?
You know, I like Danny Ford, and he was a nice guy, and he was fun to be around, but he was not a fit here. And he didn't make any bones about that. He always described himself as an east of the Mississippi kind of guy. And he always said when he went across that bridge in Memphis and got on the other side of the Mississippi, he never felt comfortable. So he was not a good fit. And he had one good team here that won the SEC West. But that was it, and he ended up getting fired. And the man was a heck of a coach. I mean, he recruits out the wazoo. He won a national championship at Clemson. But he wasn't a good fit. But he was a much better fit than the worst fit anywhere, any place, any time, which was Chad Morris. Chad Morris, and I defended him a little bit at the time on this. It's one of those things where you look back and you think, what was I thinking? He never moved his family here. What kind of a fit is that? You take the Arkansas job and your wife and kids stay in Texas?
Weird.
That's not a fit, right?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's not a fit.
Goodness.
That's not a fit.
Yeah.
He also,
that's a red flag.
he didn't fit in with Arkansas's tradition, none of that stuff. So he was the worst fit. It's certainly in football. Basketball, John Pelfrey was the worst. I'm not sure what he was a fit for. He was what I would call a jock who was a coach. He coached like a jock. He liked to get out with his players and work and get involved in the scrimmage with his players as a basket. I think he enjoyed basically saying, yeah, I'm a lot older than you guys now, but hey, I can still play basketball. What does that have to do with being a coach? Do you think Nick Saban goes out and puts on a uniform, goes out and gets on the field with his players? Come on.
I don't think he
Pretty
does.
stupid, right?
That would be, if somebody has a picture of that, I'd like to see it, but.
So he spent a lot of time doing that, but he was a terrible fit. And then on the women's side, the worst fit of all time would be Susie Gardner, the handpicked selection of former Chancellor John White, who interestingly ran off the best women's basketball coach ever at Arkansas, Gary Blair.
Oh, yeah.
And Blair goes to A&M and wins the national championship and hires the worst. And bragged about when he hired Susie Gardner that Pat Summitt had recommended her, so she must be great. Well, Pat Summitt was going to have to play Susie Gardner every year. Why wouldn't she recommend somebody she could beat?
That makes sense.
And Susie Gardner was not only not a fit at Arkansas, she wasn't a fit in the SEC. She wasn't even a fit in Division I women's basketball. So those are the worst fits that I've seen.
I think a lot of fans would agree with you on those picks, Mike, as well. Blake Taylor, 11-12, says the SEC is releasing the 2024 football schedule on Wednesday. I was wondering who you think will get on our schedule. We already know that Mizzou will be on that schedule. Mike, I'm curious to know your answer on this, too.
Well, there's just no way to know because along with this, you are eliminating the divisions.
Right.
So it's random. You would typically think, well, they're going to get more, Arkansas will get more old SEC West teams, former SEC West teams on their schedule than East. There's no rhyme nor reason to that. It's widely believed that in 2025, a year after this first year when Texas and Oklahoma come in 2025, you're going to go to a 9-game SEC schedule, and you're going to have 3 permanent opponents. When you do that, you will play those 3 permanent opponents every year. Mm-hmm. The goal then is to make sure that the remaining 12 teams or whatever, you play them at least every other year.
Right.
So that's the only goal. Are they going to use a computer that randomly does this? Is some guy going to sit in a room and try to figure it out? I think if I'm an Arkansas fan, I'm going to get very suspicious based on what I've seen in the past with Arkansas's football schedule. I'm going to say we're somehow going to get it shafted, like we always do. We're going to have them playing Georgia and Alabama and all this stuff all at once. But really it can't happen that way because if you're going to play every team at least every other year, then it has to rotate fairly evenly. Now, maybe you could end up within 1 year, your schedule was a lot harder than another year, the year after that, or whatever. But this is a long way of saying I don't have a clue who's going to be on that other than Missouri because I don't know how how it will randomly rotate.
Yeah.
I assume it'll be done by a computer, but
yeah,
I don't
mean,
know.
How can you make it fair unless you randomly or pick names out of a hat? They put all the SEC teams in a hat except your permanent opponent.
It's not like you can load up on Vanderbilt because you can't play Vanderbilt.
Right.
You're going to play them, but then you're going to play other people the next year, and it's just that.
Could you maybe do a couple of teams that maybe Arkansas hasn't seen in the East? I mean,
Well, that's the whole point.
Right?
Arkansas goes forever and doesn't play Florida, goes forever and doesn't play Vanderbilt. That's not going to happen under this new arrangement in 2025.
Right.
Because it's going to, again, every other year you're going to play everybody.
Right.
One way or another.
But in 2024, maybe just to get some matchups that we haven't seen in a while. They may do that. They may throw some matchups that Arkansas hasn't seen.
You'd have to know what Greg Sankey's thinking on that.
I know.
You'd have to sit in a meeting and know what they're talking about. Maybe.
Maybe
they would do a lot of different things. But to me, I think they're going to sit there and try to make it fair. In other words, no one team gets a schedule that's a lot harder than the others. But you're going to have to get, under this system, you're going to have to get used to the idea that you may have 1 year where your schedule's really tough, and then it's easier the next year.
Yeah.
Oh, this is our bad year, we got to play these teams.
Or will Arkansas just get the bad end of the stick every year.
Well, I don't think
Or
that's
will that happen?
if you're playing everybody every other year.
that's
I don't
true.
think that can happen.
I don't know. They always find a way, Mike. They always find a way. S. Giles wants to know, I keep hearing about the impact that the new staffers are having on Arkansas football, but how does that translate for this season? Seems to me that we need help now.
It's interesting because Otis Kurt put an article up on our website, which I found very interesting, in which ESPN, and I'm not a big ESPN fan, and I'm not even going to argue the validity of what they wrote.
Okay.
I'll just tell you what they wrote. They ranked, because typically they'll rank just your recruiting.
Yeah.
What they did was they took into account freshmen that might play in your 2023 recruiting class, guys that signed in your 2023 February book or February signing day that will come in as freshmen this fall. So those guys and portal transfers that will come in and have an impact immediately. In other words, they didn't just rate your overall recruiting class and where you might be 2 years from now or 3 years. What your class will do immediately. Who are the players? How many players did you bring in for this football season that are new, either freshmen or portal transfers, that can actually help you win something? And they ranked Arkansas 13th in the country, which is pretty good. They ranked their recruiting in that respect higher than they did their overall recruiting. I think overall they were lower than that. But what they're saying is that Sam Pittman and his staff, and especially this young defensive staff, what they're saying is those guys went out and got people that can play right away. They weren't just looking at long-term projects. They were looking at this guy can help us immediately. And they're guessing on this. They could be totally wrong. But that's a new way of, and to me, a more interesting way of rating a recruiting class. Instead of just giving a generalized ranking, they're basically saying, this is what you did to help yourself immediately. And in that respect, they're saying Arkansas did a good job.
And Arkansas was ranked 13th?
13th in the country.
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear all the time, and we talk to Otis weekly on our football recruiting reports.
By the way, I'm going to get comfortable. I can't.
He's getting comfortable now.
I tried that for about 10 minutes. It's like, are you kidding me? My back hurts.
You're good, Mike. Be comfortable. We're chatting here. But you see all the time, or Otis talks about it as well, how these new guys are really good recruiters, and that's what Sam Pittman wanted. He wanted guys to come on and make an immediate impact on the staff who could recruit talent like that. So I think it all kind of makes sense that's where ESPN's getting this ranking from.
Yeah, interesting question, and it tied right into something that's actually going on right now.
Yeah, I love that. Marty Bird's Proxy asks, what do you think the Dan Enos offense will look like? Will it be a lot like his previous stop here under Coach Bielema, which at times was pretty good?
Well, I think a lot of people are guessing because we're not going to know for sure till we see it. But what I would say is multiple. Whatever the word multiple means, it's multiple, which means
whatever the word multiple.
Which means he could run a pro-style offense. They could be looking like running a pro-style offense at one point. Next thing you know, they're doing the RPO game like they did under, your previous offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles. You may be run heavy at some point. You may be pass heavy at some point. I don't know that he's going to do the trick plays the way Enos or the way Briles did. We'll see on that. But I think you can just expect a lot of different stuff from what I've read. The goal being, and I certainly understand this, if you're a defensive coordinator, the enemy of a defensive coordinator is unpredictability on the part of the offense.
A varied offense.
If you don't know, if you can't sit there, we always see when we're watching games, the guy up in the booth, he's up there in the booth and he's got his
doing
stuff.
all the things.
Well, if he can't figure out what's coming next, then you've done your job as an offensive coordinator. And I think that's their goal. That's what they want to happen.
I think so as well. Rocket Sanders had a really good statement on the Dan Enos offense because we have to wait until, we talk about this all the time on the show, we have to wait until fall when we really get to see all the pieces put together, really. We don't really know.
That's true.
In the spring.
There was a lot they didn't do in the spring.
There was a lot they didn't do in the spring, but I like what Rocket says, where they were like, what is this offense like? And he's like, it's a lot of different stuff. Like, we're doing a lot of different things, and I love that.
The
I'm
issue
so
is,
excited.
are they going to very quickly have to simplify once the season starts? If they don't have to, then I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting for sure. DNLPRLS, that's a lot of letters, asks, why does A&M have so much money to keep updating their football facility?
They graduate about 10,000 people a year from that school.
Wow.
10,000. That means every single year there's 10,000 Aggies going out into the workforce, right?
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
In 4 years, that's 40,000 people out there. Now, those people are mostly successful. You go to A&M because you're smart. The Aggies are goofy, but they're also smart. Have you ever known somebody that was smart but was goofy?
Yeah.
That's A&M.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Goofy, but they're smart. And they tend to become very successful. A lot of them are engineers. I've talked about my uncle, who's an Aggie, who's retired now, but is a very successful engineer, made a very good living. And he's really goofy. He's been goofy as long as I've known him.
I know.
But they love football, and they view football as a thing where if we can claim a championship, they've been trying to win a championship since I was a little kid, and they've never won a national championship and won very few conference championships. It just never seems to work, but they seem to be of the attitude that money is going to do it, and money is part of it, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
If it were, then the schools with the most money would win all the time, and I don't think that happens. They just have money, and they put it. They like football in particular, but they push other sports on that campus, but not like football. There's a football culture there, and so their attitude is, we're going to have the biggest, bestest stadium in the world.
The biggest, bestest in the world.
And we're going to create an environment there, and it's going to help us win a national championship. And by the way, they're going to win it this year.
Everyone says
just
it,
like
Mike.
they was going to win it last year.
Everybody is saying it, so it must be true,
Must
right?
be, and their own media say it.
I know. That's why I'm saying it must be true.
I think I should talk to Alyssa. She needs to, in her reports from here the rest of the summer, she needs to predict that Arkansas will win a national championship.
We will have to. That you mean Texas A&M will win a national championship, not Arkansas?
No, Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh, because we're being like Texas A&M.
We need to be like them. We need
I got the joke.
to help out and do our part.
Oh, there you go. That makes sense. You know, I've never been to Texas A&M's football stadium. It's one of the ones I haven't been to in the SEC, so I don't even know what it really the atmosphere is like and what it looks like and all of that.
It's a lot of weird people there.
A lot of weird people. Have you been? Have you been to it?
Are you kidding me? I went to their stadium is the same stadium. I went there when it was a one there were no upper decks. A little press box set up on the top of it with camera filming.
Nice.
It was 45,000 in those days. It's over twice that big now.
Have you been to it? When was the last time you went there?
I have not been there since they added the 20 or 30 extra thousand seats.
Gotcha.
But
maybe we'll get a chance to go there soon if they get rid of the AT&T Stadium
absolutely.
game. Yeah.
Absolutely. You'll go there.
Oh, I can't wait.
And it'll be a tremendous experience, and you will come back going, my head.
What is happening?
My equilibrium is messed up.
I suddenly feel goofier. Is that a thing? I feel goofier.
Well, you're just not sure of things that you felt like you could count on, you can't count on anymore. It's just like, hey, the ground, is this solid? What I'm walking on solid?
Yeah.
Is it going to fall in on me? Hey, is something going to hit me? I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see what happens if we get to go there. I'll let you know what happens to my equilibrium after I leave the stadium. Hayden Smith says, and this is our final question of the show today, you've said that Georgia football is one of the best atmospheres you've seen in the SEC, but South Carolina is a negative for you. Both have large stadiums with great fan support. Geographically, they're very similar with virtually the same population. What's the difference?
You ever heard of the concept first impressions?
I have, and I'll tell you, South Carolina did not put on a good first impression.
First impressions, I think, stick with a person, maybe beyond longer than they should. The first impression I ever had of Georgia was really, really good. And a lot of it wasn't fans, but their own sports information people who are the people that host you when you go there as a visiting member of the media. You had everything you needed. You didn't run into any snafus. And they fed you unbelievable. The first time I went there was in one of those 11 a.m. games.
Yeah.
We got there about 9. They had breakfast.
Ooh,
so we ate breakfast.
Nice.
Okay, then at halftime, it's noon. So we had lunch at noon. It was different. It wasn't the same stuff. Then when the game was over, they brought out like treats like ice cream and popsicles and things like that. And then if you stayed long enough, they brought kind of dinner type food. I've never seen so much food in my life. So they really knew how to get to you. But in talking to a lot of Arkansas fans, they just like the atmosphere. Athens is about the size of Fayetteville. Maybe the overall metro area is not like Northwest Arkansas, but Athens is a little larger than Fayetteville, about 130,000. But it's a nice college campus, nice stadium, polite fans. They don't rub it in on you. They're not jerks. So everything about them was a positive initial impression. My initial impression of South Carolina, it was the first SEC game in any sport, any place, any time for Arkansas. 1992, fall of 92. Wow. Arkansas had just lost to the Citadel, which got Jack Crow fired. So Joe Kynes had taken over as interim head coach, and I'm going to go to the South Carolina game at South Carolina. So I pull up there in front of the stadium, and if I would ask you to think about the fact that how many football games have you gone to, college games, where the football stadium wasn't on campus?
Not a lot. And the weirdest part about it is South Carolina's was my first football experience, and it's in it's like by train tracks in a railroad.
It's nowhere near the campus.
No, it's like a railroad
It's an industrial area. You have these huge flat parking lots that are asphalt, and they're just everywhere. And so you've got this stadium, which is a nice stadium, sitting around all of these parking lots.
Yeah.
But there's nothing else there.
Yeah.
As far as you can see, there's just nothing. It's not like trees and campus and the atmosphere and all that. So then you get out and you kind of go over to the other side, and that's where you see the train tracks.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, we're in the middle of a railroad yard here. But what you don't know the first time you're there is there's all these railroad cars back there, passenger cars, and that's the tailgating. Now, what do most people think of tailgating? You're outside, you're the grove, the trees, you're under maybe a tent or whatever.
Not for South Carolina.
But South Carolina, they're indoors. Mm-hmm. They're not outside under trees. They're in these little railroad cars. Well, guess what happens inside those railroad cars? Because you're not outdoors. Drinking.
Well, yeah.
Lots of drinking.
Well, that happens outdoors too.
Yeah, but it's. Let me ask you this: is a person more likely to become crazy drunk indoors or outdoors? I would say indoors.
Okay, all right.
Because other people are not seeing this.
True.
The point is, they go in there and they get completely plastered. Then they come out and go into the stadium. Now, here's me. I've never covered them before.
Yeah.
And I'm the only guy there from the station that I work, and I've got my little camera.
Yeah.
And I was going to be up on the photo deck, except there was no room up there. So I just decided, okay, I'll shoot on the field. Plus, I wanted to get Joe Kynes running out from the tunnel, the first SEC, blah, blah, blah. Nice. Here's the first SEC game running out. So I'm down there on the field. Well, they can clearly see by my dress, and I guess they know who their photographer. They knew I was an Arkansas media person. I mean, it was like I became the enemy. I'm not kidding you. You're standing there. There's a guy 15 feet behind you, in the stands, and he's drunk, and he's yelling at you. And that went on for 2.5, 3 hours. When it was over, I felt like I was been through the ringer. So, you don't exactly have a positive impression of the place,
you
right?
had a bad first impression.
Yeah. And let me just say, I tend to not go back. I've been back a few times, but if I have an option, no, I don't want to go there. The oddest thing to me is that you would have a football stadium that's nowhere on your campus.
It is weird. So that is the one weird part about South Carolina. But I will say, the game that I went to, they were all very nice and very sweet.
So
and good
no one
people.
yelled at you?
No one yelled at me. They were very nice. Oh, my whole family is South Carolina Gamecock fans. So.
Knowing you probably went there dressed in maroon.
Yeah, I did.
Well, no wonder they didn't yell at you, goober.
I did. Because my whole family was Gamecock fans.
We're getting into a South Carolina nonsense. But you see,
true, they didn't treat me hostile.
You're not even objective when it comes to this because you got these people in your family.
I have a family all over the SEC.
I have no ties to South Carolina one way or another.
No, you don't.
So I'm completely objective on this. It's a terrible place to go watch a football game.
Okay, I'll agree with you there. The stadium is weird, but the fans are
Georgia's great.
They're cool.
Auburn's great. LSU stinks. Missouri stinks. Missouri stinks not because they're mean, but they're just a weird place. Vanderbilt's a strange little bitty. It's like a high school stadium, you know? It's just weird. Tennessee is like, how do you explain Tennessee? It's like a monster stadium with a bunch of people. They're not as weird as Aggies, but close.
They can be rude, though. They can be rude. I'll tell you that. You saw the throwing the stuff on the field and, you know.
Ole Miss conceded.
Yes.
I don't want to hear another word as long as I live about the wonderful restaurants on the square in Oxford.
Yeah?
We used to go there, and Jason Carroll, who was our sports director, we're going to go to this restaurant down here on the square. It's really good. And I'd be going, this is not good. What are you talking about? You know?
Alyssa is laughing off camera over here because I'm sure she's been to those same restaurants with you and has her own opinions on those restaurants.
And I will say this, Ole Miss has the worst frat boy problem in the SEC.
Oh gosh,
we get there. Look, a lot of times we'll come in the day before a game, and so you're going to do live reports. You don't want to do that on their campus because they're driving around, they know who you are, and they yell things at you in the middle of your live shot. So I don't like Ole Miss. Mississippi State gets this terrible rap, Stark Vegas, all this stuff. I like Starkville. Yeah. I like the people there. They're kind of underdogs, and they know who they are, and they're proud of it, except for Hillary. She's annoying, but.
Mike, you're killing me today. I don't know what you're on this Monday, but I love it. That's going to do it.
I like Hillary, but
Hillary's
she is. Mississippi State is a school I like, a school I enjoy going to.
Right.
Like their games. So there's a few of them that I like. Georgia, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida.
I'm not going to get you on Florida.
No.
I'm not going to start you on Florida. Alyssa's shaking her head over there. We know why she doesn't like Florida. I'm not going to get you started on Florida.
Well, the problem is there's nothing to do there. I mean, when the game's over, everybody goes to this one place, the Pizza Hut, and it's full.
They don't go to the Pizza Hut, Mike. There are plenty of restaurants in Gainesville I would love to show you sometime, and maybe I will this football season.
You're making that up.
I'm not making that up. I promise you. Gainesville people in the comments, they can back me up there. But that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.